After a short recess, we are back on the floor of Congress. We are back to Constitution addresses the President with a long list of grievances presented recently in Las Vegas by the governors of all 50 states. Let's go live now to the auditorium floor once again.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have these additions to my previous comments. We are talking here about secession. The governors of all 50 states met in Las Vegas recently to discuss their grievances with the federal government, and after that meeting a vote was taken and a unanimous decision was reached to secede from the Union, effectively firing the federal government. Let me point out that this is not about breaking up the United States of America. It's about firing those who are supposed to be working for the people. The people don't feel that their so-called representatives represent them. And reference was made to the U.S. Constitution that in the course of human events, it becomes necessary to dissolve the political bonds which have bound us. This part of the U.S. Constitution is the basis for our decision to effectively fire the federal representatives and dismantle the federal agencies, which have all become bloated bureaucracies and conspiracies of control and instruments of demonic detriment to the people. Any sensible person looking objectively at the activities of the federal agencies will agree that they no longer serve the people and should be dismantled. We have met to discuss this, and we have reached a decision about secession. We, the people, vote to secede. It is time for secession. It is time to dissolve the bonds which no longer serve us. It is time to make things fair again in these United States. It is abundantly clear that this system cannot be reformed because government now grants government powers without approval of the people and without even a nod from our so-called representatives in Congress, which is a body out of step with the American people. And we don't need representatives that don't even read the legislation before voting on it. That is not representation. We are sick of the backroom deals and a government that is not of the people, for the people, by the people, and has less and less to do with the people. Government needs our consent, and we do not consent to wars that last decades and drain us. We do not consent to an IRS. When did we ever vote for an IRS? This was thrust upon us, and we do not agree. We do not consent to having representatives because they are corrupt. And having representatives in government is like a football team that isn't involved in the game and has representatives on the playing field for them. If anyone suggested that a football team play the game with representatives instead of having the football team out on the gridiron, people would laugh. But that's exactly what we have. We have a football game in which the football players are not on the field. And representatives have replaced them, and the game looks like it's being thrown. Instead of our representatives scoring touchdowns for us, they are scoring touchdowns for the other team. And we are getting slaughtered. The cheerleaders are looking onto the field with dismay, bewilderment, and they are appalled by the actions of our so-called representatives. We actually see our representatives running the ball in the opposite direction and scoring one touchdown after another for the opposing team. Some Americans are looking at the playing field and asking, "What's wrong with that? It's okay. It's normal." Other Americans are not as fluoridated or mind-controlled and are asking a different question. What the devil is going on here? This is not right. These are Americans who desperately want to stop the game and end the fraudulent representation by our so-called representatives. And we want to put our team on the playing field once again, as the framers of the Constitution had in mind to start with. We want a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Secession makes sense. The people want to govern themselves, state by state. We don't want to be part of any larger group which forces laws on us that we don't approve of and governs without our consent. If this was a football game, we'd quit and go home to our own states. We would not participate any longer in this rigged game. We can't cheer for this team anymore. Secession makes sense to the 50 governors and the people they represent. With the football game metaphor in mind, let's move on to grievance number 36. We never had a proper investigation of the inside job terrorist attack known as 9/11. We know how any plane crash is investigated, and we don't see anything that resembles normal procedures. To us, it reeks of cover-up. Now there is a freeze-out, and we're not allowed to ask any questions. To us, that indicates guilt of the dictatorship. It's the JFK assassination all over again. We see the same role by the FBI, the same role by the CIA, and we see two successive presidents working as if they are on the same team, and we suspect that they might be. The obvious question is, who do you guys work for? I'm speaking about you and the former president, the one who actually has a credible birth certificate. Is there a government behind the government which is calling the shots, telling you puppets what to do next? Mr. Puppet President, of all the grievances the people of the United States have with the federal government, the poor investigation of the false flag inside job terrorist attack on U.S. soil in September of 2001 has to be, for some, the most egregious. The people feel there is a mountain of evidence which supports the accusation that our own government did it. And both you and the former idiot, I mean puppet, I mean goofball, I mean loser, I mean jerko, I mean Bush, I mean president, have neglected to show respect to the American people by allowing a group of scientists not selected by government like the Warren Commission or the Omission Commission, but a real group of scientists from the public, chosen by the people. And I'm not talking about yet another rigged selection. We have had it with your rigged selections. We want a real investigation of 9/11, like you promised prior to 2008 when you were romancing the nation and trying to get elected with false and empty promises. How can you look at yourself in the mirror after betraying the people like this? When there is a plane crash, the FAA assembles all the pieces of the plane. It's not carted off as if the murderers are trying to conceal something from the public. This is like the football game in which the representatives help the other team score a touchdown. George Bush said, "You're either with us or you're with the terrorists." No, we are not with you because you are the terrorists, Mr. Bush. How stupid do you think we are? The real choices are, we're either with you, the terrorists, or we're with the people. And we're going with the people against you, the terrorists. I'm sure that you're aware that tampering with the evidence is another serious crime. And George Bush didn't hesitate to commit this felony also. Do you really think we didn't notice? Some of us know what's going on and we don't like it. The least you could do is find your own group of scientists and demonstrate to us how kerosene melts steel, which has been encased in concrete, because any scientist worth his salt would never allow you to make the claim that jet fuel can melt construction steel under the conditions that prevailed in the World Trade Center buildings. Put your best team together also to explain why Building 7 came down, because we never read a single word about Building Number 7 in the Omission Commission report, and we need an explanation. While you're at it, Mr. Puppet President, tell us how Jane Stanley could have announced Building Number 7 coming down while the building stood standing behind her as she made the announcement. Because many people saw this and have wondered how she knew in advance, unless your Al-Qaeda told her. Who is Al-Qaeda, Mr. Puppet President? We never saw anything that would indicate that they are a real organization. Every time we start looking into terrorist attacks allegedly attributed to them, the official story unwinds, and we find CIA fingerprints all over the place. So we are wondering if you have any real evidence that Al-Qaeda actually exists. Tell us also how you could have killed a man who was already dead since the early part of the decade. I'm talking about Osama bin Laden, who was terminally ill in 2001 and had just gotten out of American hospitals, where he was given treatment as if he was a national hero, a CIA agent, a close friend of the Bush crime family and the Queen, and they had done many business deals together. The reason he was treated so well in that hospital, Mr. Puppet President, is because he was a CIA agent, a close friend of the Bush crime family and the Queen, and they had done many business deals together. It is also true that he was dead nearly a decade before you lied to us and said you killed him again. We would ask the Navy SEALs to tell us what they know, but you killed them too, didn't you? Were they fictional too? That's how you get rid of people. You just kill them, don't you? Isn't that why you granted yourself the right to kill anyone, anytime, for any reason? Mr. Puppet President, do you believe in the Constitution? Your actions seem to indicate that you have a disdain for it. The Patriot Act took months to prepare, didn't it? Didn't lawyers work on that bill for several months? Why was it ready so soon after 9/11? Did someone have prior knowledge of the inside job? Is that why they sold the airline stocks short that day? Do these people know Jane Stanley by any chance? If they had prior knowledge, maybe that's why Jane Stanley knew that Building Number 7 was scheduled to come down by demolition. Do you think maybe she should have looked behind her and waited until she saw the building actually collapse before making the announcement? You have to tell those guys in the CIA to clean up their act. With mistakes like this, someone is going to figure out that 9/11 was an inside job, false flag, terrorist attack by our own government. The wholesale murder of tens of thousands of innocent Americans by our own criminal government. You wouldn't want the people to know the truth now, would you, Mr. Puppet President? Mr. President, you have launched a vicious attack against whistleblowers. Would you consider Jane Stanley one of those who brought us the truth? Will there not be a manhunt for Jane Stanley for bringing the truth to the public? All she did was follow orders, and somebody on the inside job team really goofed. This isn't sloppy government, this is sloppy murder, and someone should be in jail. But we haven't heard of anyone going to jail. Have you, Mr. Puppet President? Why don't you make an executive order that no reporter is allowed to announce buildings coming down until they are actually demolished with explosives and thermite? Do you have any idea why the hole in the Pentagon doesn't fit? You know, if the people could just see those 85 confiscated videos that the FBI illegally seized without a warrant, without probable cause, we might actually see the missile and know the truth. Do you want to release those illegally seized videos? This is unconstitutional, you know. You taught constitutional law, so I presume that you already know how unconstitutional these confiscations were. Why don't you do the right thing and just order the FBI to release those videos so we can see why the hole doesn't fit? Have you seen the videos yourself, Mr. President? Are you prepared to tell us what it was that hit the Pentagon? Was it a missile? What was Dick Cheney talking to the aide about? Didn't the aide tell him that the plane was coming in and ask repeatedly if something should be done? It's careless of Mr. Cheney to talk to the aide in front of a member of Congress. This member of Congress told us what he knew. He revealed the truth. And we'd like to know if that member of Congress might be considered a traitor or a whistleblower for bringing the truth to the people. There are so many unanswered questions, and I've asked only a few. I know that you are not taking questions about 9/11. So when the 50 states resign from the federal union, maybe we will order our own independent investigation to get to the truth. The whole truth, and none of that government propaganda stuff. We're going to cite the poor investigation by both you and your predecessor as reason number 36 for our secession.